Firefighters of Reddit, what's the most bizarre cause of fire you've ever seen, heard? I work in student accommodation. Students manage to start about 3 fires a year, mostly by leaving cooking unattended and then forgetting about it, and it's my job to fix things afterwards. The more stupid than bizarre, but here's some highlights and some top tips for annoying the fire brigade. If you would like to grow some weed in your wardrobe, make sure your designer shirts are hanging above the really hot lamps you're using. It'll catch fire while you're sleeping and fill your room with weed smoke. For bonus points, set yourself on fire while trying to put it out. Double bonus points, deny all knowledge of this to the fire brigade while you're obviously high, reek of weed and burning plastic, and have clearly been on fire recently. If you've decided candles are a fun thing to play with, do this indoors next to a big stack of paper towels. They absorb molten wax really well, but you might also end up with too much fire. If you've had enough, you can dispose of excess fire in the recycling bin. Flaming shots are a great way to liven up your party. Make sure you try to light them when you're already pissed as newts and have spilled vodka all over the kitchen table. You'll be doing this indoors because of course you effing will. The university has banned fireworks on campus, but you can make your own by microwaving a variety of interesting things. Coconuts explode so violently they'll destroy the microwave and the nearby cupboards. Bonus points, have your boyfriend get mad and try to fight the bomb squad who are here to investigate the explosion. All these things happened over the 7 years I worked in various buildings. There's probably more, but I'll have to try and jog my memory a bit. Edit, I'm getting a lot of replies about the coconut explosion. No sad face. Back in 2011 there was a fire in Croatia and I was sent out to stop it with a team. The cause of the fire was a cat. The cat turned on a stove. Don't ask me how. We were sent to a funeral home for a fire investigation. We arrived and there was light smoke coming from the rear door. The nicely dressed funeral director and his 2 female assistants met us at that door and were all slightly out of breath. They had just started the process of cremating someone, and when they were wheeling the body into the crematorium, the thin particle board the body was on broke. The body was half in and the oven was up to 900 degrees and rising. They cremate people at about 1600. The body is on a conveyor roller system like in factories, but with the broken board and the deceased weighing about 350 pounds, they weren't able to get her in before she started to sizzle in smoke. We got our pike poles and lifted and pushed and managed to get the body all the way in so that they could close the door and finish the process. During that time I was watching her head catch fire and the rest of her start to sizzle and char more. I think her head was far enough in that the burning hair smell was vented up and I didn't smell that. I did smell her body sizzling and cooking, and it smelled like I was grilling steaks. The fact that she smelled delicious was a really weird thing and stuck with me more than watching her start to burn. Ooh, I can answer this. Recently I had a fire that I investigated. The only fire damage in the 2nd floor bedroom is in a single joist space in the floor. The carpet, padding, and subfloor were completely consumed, perfectly along the joists on either side. Elsewhere in this room, a laptop battery exploded. There is no opening in the floor to the joist space that burned. The only explanation I have is that there was a gas leak into that joist space, and enough of the ambient gas leaked into the room and the battery failed igniting the gas, which traveled through the HVAC system to the joist space where it actively burned. Problems with this: it is effing ridiculous to have 2 failures occur at essentially the same time. There's no fire damage in the bedroom, only heat damage. The gas line that ran through this area was only on one end of the joist space and was a solid steel pipe. There were no joints. There were also no holes I could find. Also, I am hard-pressed to believe that a single cell of a lithium battery has enough energy to ricochet off of a wall and penetrate through carpet, padding, and subfloor. So that's my weirdest cause. In California during the 80s there was a series of fires and a skilled fire investigator was hired to find the culprit. It turned out that he was the arsonist all along. It was on this day in 1992 that a jury found Orr guilty of setting fire to 3 stores in the San Joaquin Valley. Convictions in other arsons followed, including the Alays tragedy and a blaze in the Glendale Hills that incinerated more than 60 homes. Orr was ultimately suspected in more than 1,000 fires, leading an FBI analyst to call him probably the most prolific American arsonist of the 20th century. Suspected to be responsible for more than 1,000 blazes. Man, his career was on fire. My father was retired, a firefighter in London. He once phoned me just to tell me about a job he had just been to. He told me that he had just been to a fire in a sex dungeon and that the fire had been started when the woman was trying to burn the man's chest hair off with a candle, then proceed to drop the candle onto the fur rug when hot wax burnt her. I laughed and he said, "You'll be sick in a second." He then proceeded to tell me the couple were in their very late 70s. I'm not a firefighter, however, the fire station in my hometown burned down. People started calling the fire station telling them it was on fire, and they didn't believe it until they finally walked outside and looked. They had just enough time to get the fire engines and a few things out before it got too bad. It ended up burning to the ground and they had a new one built. Back when I worked EMS, I ran a medical call with a very difficult patient. The patient refused any care or transport. I did paperwork for a refusal and gave the patient a copy. The patient then, "What the F am I supposed to do with this paper?" I said, "Burn it for all I care." 10 minutes later I'm back en route to that address for a structure fire. Not a firefighter, but my father was. One day he got called to a house fire on the outskirts of town. Upon arrival the whole house was engulfed in flames. However, the owner of the house, an older lady, desperately wanted to run back in and get her belongings. They had to restrain her. After the flames were put out, my father went through the rubble to hopefully find some of her belongings. Right in the middle of the house he found leftovers of a book, dolls, mason jars of oil, sand. Then it clicked, this lady was doing black magic. The lady's breath smelled like pure gasoline. She was doing an old ritual of spitting flammable liquids onto whatever she was casting a spell on. It's done with oil usually, but I guess this lady didn't have the funds or brains, so she settled with gasoline, which she put onto the dolls that what my dad assumes was surrounded by candles. Yup, a lady lit up her house by spitting out gasoline in the name of black magic. BC, why not? Actual firefighter here. Years ago during my training, a guy parked his work van in a parking lot, threw a chain he had from the cabin to the back, and went inside the store. Each end of the chain happened to land on battery posts still hooked up to some machinery inside the van. It sparked and melted the tarp it was on, and shortly the whole van was up in flames. Pretty crazy odds. We had 2 separate fires in a year that were caused by the sun shining through a window, through an object, and causing the magnifying glass effect. One was a glass paperweight sitting on top of a stack of papers. It burned a hole straight through the stack, down to the desk. It was wild. The other one escapes me at the moment. Might have been the sun shining through a glass bottle or something, if memory serves me correctly. Either way, it's relatively bizarre to get a call like that, let alone 2. And both were fairly close to one another. Even more ironic, a friend of mine had this happen in his own home the same year. The sun was shining on a Santa Claus figurine and the fabric rub caught fire. Had a guy try and kill himself by lighting himself on fire in an app stairwell last week. Unfortunately, it turned into a 2-alarm fire that killed a 10-year-old. Not a firefighter, but at my school some absolute clown tried to make microwave noodles without water. Set the microwave on fire. Then they set a dryer on fire by trying to dry a pillow. Don't remember what it was made of, but the tag said, "Do not put in dryer." Then they set the dining hall toaster on fire by trying to make a grilled cheese. It's a conveyor belt toaster and they put a piece of bread with cheese on top in. Cheese melted, got stuck to the back, bread caught fire. Learned from a newspaper. California lady starts major wildfire in California for her bored firefighter boyfriend. The fire destroyed or cost $8 million to put out or property damage. Firefighter here. Had a dumpster fire at a sleepy strip club. I don't want to even know what the hell was in that dumpster. I just know I stayed very far back and dodged the water into the dumpster. When I was in the academy, my investigator instructor told us about how a bear had tried to get a beehive from the top of a power pole, touched the live wires and fried itself. Its fat then caught fire and dropped down onto the hillside and started a wildfire. That's right, Smokey the bear started a wildfire. A hummingbird feeder had a front porch and entryway of a small lady's house burn up because the sun refracted through a mostly empty glass hummingbird feeder and started the latticework behind it on fire, much like kids burn ants with a magnifying glass. In northern Australia we have birds that carry fire from an existing fire and can start another up to several kilometers away. They do it because they catch all the animals and insects running from the flames. It's a real nightmare when you just contained one fire to see more smoke rising just over the hill. Tomato plants in a pot can slowly combust and heat the pot up so much that it burns through the floor, say a deck, slowly but surely. A student TP'd his neighbor's room over the weekend while he was home. The TP dropped against a light bulb and the whole room was gutted. It was as obvious as a missing tooth when you drove by. Wasn't a fully engulfed fire, but in my opinion a bizarre cause nonetheless. I'm a volunteer FF in Germany, and we recently responded to unclear smoke in building, probably basement on fire, along with another department. We sent in several SCBA squads to check the whole house, rescue residents and fight eventual fires. Turns out some notoriously drunk lady decided to commit suicide by putting a disposable barbecue on the desk in her basement apartment to suffocate from the lack of oxygen the coal would cause. Ended up falling unconscious, smoking the whole building and endangering other people in the house. She went straight to a psychiatric hospital. Snow globe. Seriously. Perhaps the most unusual residential fire cause that Welsheimer recalls during his fire service career was a 2008 fire that destroyed a home in Bear Creek Township. In that instance, investigators determined that a snow globe, which was stored in the home's garage, along with a large quantity of other inventory for a local retail shop, was exposed to sunlight, which was refracted and focused onto some nearby cardboard boxes as if by a magnifying glass. The focused light ignited the cardboard boxes, which then led to the eventual destruction of the home. Neighboring department was called on that one. Not a firefighter, but pig fires. Yes, you heard it right, probably take the cake. Yes, it's silly, but it's also bizarre. Basically, pigs contain a lot of fat, so if there is a fire in a pig farm, and one of them burns, it will lead to the fat accumulating on the floor, then igniting, then the whole thing burning down, in very spectacular fashion.